Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Luke Fickell, the Wisconsin Badgers picking up some real momentum on the recruiting trail, landing another commitment in the 2025 class. This one coming from four-star wide receiver Eugene Hilton Jr. And yes, that name might sound familiar. The son of former All-Pro NFL wide receiver T.Y. Hilton. And you look at Eugene Hilton Jr. and say this kid is just a difference maker in this Wisconsin passing attack. And you look at the kind of Phil Longo effect in terms of attracting difference makers, playmakers on the offensive side of the football. I mean, 5 years ago, Wisconsin beating out Georgia and Michigan for one of the premier wide receivers on the high school recruiting trail, kind of unheard of because they didn't want to go play for the offense that you saw under Paul Chryst. You look at Phil Longo revolutionizing this Wisconsin offense. I think it allows you to go on the recruiting trail and grab some of these top talented guys. And I think Eugene Hilton Jr. is certainly an example of that. Want to get into the film, more importantly, just have a conversation about what Wisconsin's doing on the recruiting trail. I am a massive fan of the talent that they are acquiring at the high school level. Before we get into it, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. And many of the longtime listeners know that I love talking the recruiting trail, and the amount of support for the people who are checking the fellas out in the middle of June on the recruiting trail. That stuff means the world to the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into this one. I want to start with, we're going to talk about two different prospects that committed to Wisconsin, because yes, Eugene Hilton Jr. commits to Wisconsin Friday afternoon, late Thursday night. Four-star linebacker Mason Posa also committing to Wisconsin. You look at Mason Posa, a guy that we're going to talk about a little bit later. You beat out Texas A&M in the Oregon Ducks for one of the best linebackers in the 2025 cycle. These are two massive recruiting wins for Luke Fickell and this staff. And I want to get into Eugene Hilton Jr. first and kind of dive into why I think this is a really, really important get for Wisconsin. You kind of look at what Phil Longo is trying to do within Wisconsin. We kind of knew there were going to be some growing pains. And I think a lot of those growing pains had to deal with, hey, you got to get the personnel in that can operate in this Phil Longo offense. And you give Phil Longo a couple of years to kind of hand select his wide receivers that fit what he want to do. That's going to be a massive storyline. You look at Eugene Hilton Jr., one of the things I love about him is what he can do working vertically down the field. This is a wide receiver that averaged over 19 yards per catch his junior year at high school. A wide receiver that you can kind of tell his pops was an NFL All-Pro wide receiver because the nuance and the understanding that he has at the position is extremely impressive. Another thing that you're going to see about Eugene Hilton Jr., he is really good with the football in his hands. You're talking about a wide receiver that goes 6'2", 200 pounds. Yes, he has that juice in terms of long speed. You see that on the kick return, but he's also a really, really physical presence that is hard for defensive backs to bring down. You take a look at, this is probably what I love most about Eugene Hilton Jr. Him at the catch point, he's silly. I mean, he's absolutely elite. A really, really good ball skills, using that physical frame, going up, making plays. You see what he can do after the catch as well. I think this is one of those dynamic playmakers, those kind of playmakers that Wisconsin desperately needs with this Phil Longo offense, and you kind of see it. I mean, I think Eugene Hilton Jr. can attack all areas of the football field. He excels working vertically down the field, obviously really good after the catch. A guy that you can get involved in a lot of different ways in this Wisconsin offense, get a little chance to see what he can do after the catch. Really, really smooth mover, making people miss, human joystick in space. Really, really like this kid. And then you talk about Mason Posa. I do want to talk just a little bit about my guy, Mason Posa. I meant to get around to it this morning. Kind of got caught up with some stuff. I'm happy he went to Wisconsin because he's a two-time state champ on the wrestling mat. I think a lot of the Wisconsin fans know that Luke Fickell, who was one time a three-time state champ in the state of Ohio, in his own right as a wrestler. You know he values getting wrestlers out of the high school class. And you look at Mason Posa, I don't think the Oregon fans or the Texas A&M fans would have appreciated what we're talking about in terms of how elite this kid is on the wrestling mat. Had an offer to Arizona State to go wrestle for Arizona State. And you look at Mason Posa, and then you take a look at the football player and just kind of say this kid plays like a wrestler. I mean, he is all over the field, over 100 tackles, 15 tackles for loss during his junior campaign. He can go off the edge. With the 6'3", 210 frame, he can go sideline to sideline. He's a phenomenal athlete, can operate in coverage. You look at kind of where the Big Ten is going in terms of a lot of athleticism that's entering the Big Ten. You need linebackers that can kind of match the athleticism that Oregon, that USC, that Washington is bringing into this conference. I think Mason Posa is one of those linebackers. He excels operating in space, can go sideline to sideline, can cover tight ends up the seam. You're kind of getting, in my mind, kind of an athletic freak at the linebacker spot that, yes, certainly needs to put on some weight. I don't think it helped that he was wrestling, trying to keep his weight down during the winter. So as he transitions into a full-time football athlete, I'm sure that weight will come on for Mason Posa's frame. And I think the last thing you got to talk about, you take a look at Wisconsin and what they're doing on the recruiting trail. I think Wisconsin fans have to be fired up. And you saw them do some really good work in the transfer portal. If you're Wisconsin, you had a top 25 class in 2024. If you can stack another top 25 class in 2025, continue to use the portal that Luke Fickell's been doing it, you're going to look at a roster that's really, really complete over the next couple of years. We all knew that Luke Fickell is a developmental head coach. It was not going to be a one-year turnaround in Madison, Wisconsin, but he's done it before. He built Cincinnati up into a powerhouse at the collegiate level. You kind of just feel really comfortable that he can kind of do the same thing in Madison, Wisconsin. Given the time, 2 massive pickups for the Wisconsin Badgers. Wanted to hop on, talk a little bit about what they are doing on the recruiting trail. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Hope you all have a phenomenal Friday night. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.